You're listening right now because everybody seeks truth. And that's what makes this the best show. From veteran broadcaster Charles Bosworth, welcome to the BozCast, where we keep it nice. News, information, conversations, and entertainment. Let's get to it.
Hey everyone, welcome to the BozCast. I'm Charles Bosworth. My family calls me Charles, my kids call me Dad, and friends call me Boz or Charlie. Some quick housekeeping here. Hit the follow button right now for auto downloads. And for everything else, show notes, back catalog, premium tiers, they all live at boz.link. That's boz.link. All right, let's get going. So August 18th is my birthday. I share it with someone that was born 437 years ago, or the year 1587, depending on when you might be listening to this, in what would become North Carolina. Her name was Virginia Dare. She holds the distinction of being the first English child born in what would become the United States, and she vanished from history when she was just 3 years old. I've spent decades being mysteriously drawn back to the exact region where she disappeared, and today I want to tell you why her story matters, and why it might not be finished. Welcome to The White Indian Goddess, my search for Virginia Dare. This is part 1 of 2, where I lay out why I believe we've been telling the story of America's first English child all wrong. So let me start with the basics, because most people think they know the story, but the details matter more than you might think. Virginia Dare was born to Eleanor and Ananias Dare on August 18, 1587, in the Roanoke colony. Her grandfather, John White, was the colony's governor. Now, you might be more familiar with Sir Walter Raleigh. He was the one who founded the first colony at Roanoke Island back in 1585, though he funded it rather than led it personally. And here's where it gets interesting. 9 days after little Virginia was born, 9 days after America's first English birth, White departed for England to gather some desperately needed supplies. Now think about that. This man left his 9-day-old granddaughter, his daughter, and 115 other colonists to fend for themselves in what was essentially hostile wilderness. But White didn't have much choice. And the Spanish Armada conflict prevented his return for 3 critical years. That's 3 years. Those colonists had to survive, adapt, or perish on their own. When White finally made it back in 1590, he found the settlement abandoned except for 2 cryptic messages: Croatoan carved into a post, and Crow, C-R-O, carved into a tree. But here's a key detail that most people miss. There was no distress cross, and that was their agreed-upon signal for trouble. Croatoan referred to both a nearby island, what we now call Hatteras Island, and a friendly Native American tribe that was living there. White wasn't panicked about finding this message. He actually expected it might lead him to the colonists. But then severe weather hit. Storm damage forced his ship to return to England without ever searching Croatoan Island. And then that's where the mystery supposedly begins. Except, what if it's not really a mystery at all? In the years that followed, several attempts were made to learn what happened to those colonists, but miscommunication and harsh weather consistently thwarted discovery efforts. And over the centuries, all kinds of speculation swirled around their fate. Some believe they simply perished in the unfamiliar environment. Maybe disease ravaged the population. Others think hostile indigenous tribes killed them all. But many have long believed something different, that they assimilated with and lived alongside the Croatoan tribe. And here's where the story gets personal for me, because the theory gaining serious traction among the Lumbee people of North Carolina suggests this last option is perhaps closer to the truth than any tragic alternative. The popular narrative of mysterious disappearance starts to crumble when you actually examine the evidence. And I mean, really examine it, not just repeat the romantic folklore. For nearly 300 years after White's departure, no trace of the colony had been discovered, with one significant exception. North Carolina's Surveyor General, John Lawson, documented something remarkable in 1714. Let me read you his exact words. Quote, "The Hatteras Indians who lived on Roanoke Island, or much frequented it, tell us that several of their ancestors were white people and could talk in a book, as we do, the truth of which is confirmed by gray eyes being frequently found amongst these Indians, and no others. They value themselves extremely for their affinity to the English, and are ready to do them all friendly offices." End quote. Now listen to that again. These Indians weren't hiding some shameful secret about conquest or tragedy. They actively claimed English ancestry. They took pride in their connection. They maintained oral traditions about literacy, talked in a book, being their description of reading and writing. And we're not talking about just any English settlers here. These Indians were claiming ancestral ties to America's first English-born child and her fellow colonists. That is not the testimony of conquered people. That's the testimony of people whose ancestors chose integration over isolation. What you've heard so far gives you the foundation of why I believe Virginia Dare's story has been told wrong for centuries. But if you want to hear about the genetic evidence that supports Lumbee oral traditions, the sacred burial site protected in Robeson County that sits less than an hour away from my home, and why the Lumbee community has been protecting what they believe are the remains of Virginia Dare for nearly a century, and my plans for approaching tribal leaders with the respect this story deserves, you'll need to upgrade your subscription. When I return, I'll walk you through the 4 types of evidence that academic historians have often overlooked, genetic testing that supports centuries-old oral traditions, and why I believe America's first English child became something far more significant than a lost colonist. I'm not holding back information to be difficult, though. I'm doing this because the deeper parts of this story involve living people, sacred places, and traditions that deserve respect. This isn't just about solving a historical mystery. It's about honoring the people who preserved these stories for over 4 centuries while academic historians fumbled around with romantic theories. The subscribers who support this research are the ones who get access to the ongoing investigation. Plus, frankly, this kind of research takes time and travel, so your subscription helps make that possible. Hit upgrade, and you'll get immediate access to the rest of this episode, plus future episodes as I hopefully gain the trust of Lumbee historians and leaders. This is just the beginning of what I hope becomes a much larger conversation. For everyone else, share this with someone who loves historical mysteries, and maybe they'll be curious enough to join us for the full journey. Thank you for listening. I'm Charles Bosworth, but you can call me Charlie or Boz. The success of this show, the BozCast, depends on the 6 S's of your support. Subscribe to the podcast and Substack. Share with your network of family, friends, and foes. Be social and follow on all the platforms. Speak your mind by commenting wherever you are following. Suggest topics that interest you, and stay tuned for more. Those are the 6 S's of success for this show. I hope you'll support me. Now, treat your mind like a garden. Pull up the weeds of doubt and plant your own seeds of success. Start by choosing your emotions wisely. Love, don't hate. Be kind, not rude. Be patient with people because you want others to be patient with you. And practice the golden rule in every instance, in every aspect, and every situation, and watch your world change.
You've been listening to the BozCast with host Charles Bosworth, a general entertainment talk openly, informational talk podcast. Until next time, keep seeking truth and get to it at boz.link.
My name is Kim, and I love listening to